Hi, it's Sandy from Ontario. I just wanted to talk about Roe v. Wade and how Canada won't be able to help.
Okay. Well, more good news.
Yeah. So some Americans might have heard that, up here in Canada, some politicians or news people are saying, oh, yeah, Americans can come to Canada if they need their abortion care taken care of. That isn't exactly accurate. There's a lot of nuance in our laws. So as is right now, in 1988, there was a court ruling that ties the ability to get an abortion to our Charter of Rights and Freedom. So on paper, it would be very, very difficult to make abortion illegal. So it will most likely remain legal in the word, which means, the prime minister can get up there and say, we always respect people's rights to have an abortion. And we're one of the few nations where it's legal to have an abortion at all stages, no matter the reason. However, just because it's legal doesn't mean it's going to happen because accessibility has been made nearly impossible for a lot of people.
How so?
So in Canada, it's the provinces that are usually in control of doling out the health care. And if there's a conservative government in control of the province, what they do is they defund the abortion clinics because it's not like you can just walk into a hospital and get an abortion done. They have to be done at specific clinics. And when they start defunding these clinics, then you might be down to one or two clinics in a province. And one of our provinces are the size of 5 of your states. So if you have to travel to get that done, that's out of pocket. Plus, depending on the province you're in, there's only certain weeks of pregnancy that they'll take care of. So you might have to travel to a different province to get that done. And in some of those instances, our universal health care won't cover you should you cross those provincial lines. Whereas in most other medical need cases, they would. Or if you have to go to a private clinic, because we do have those here, our provincial funding, our provincial health care might not cover that procedure if you go to a private clinic, which means a lot of people in Canada usually have to end up going to the States in order to get abortions done. Not to mention, there is nowhere in Canada that provides an abortion in the 3rd trimester. And those are the ones that are usually something has tragically gone wrong. There's a life in jeopardy,
right,
and something needs to happen to get that done. So there is nowhere in Canada that actually provides that, which means they have to go to the States. It's out of pocket. So if there were to be a federal ban in the States, that means that Canadians also seeking those abortions would be SOL. Like there'd be nowhere on this continent pretty much that they could go realistically, unless they can afford to fly down to Mexico or something of that sort. So it's very tricky, the language that we have, because yes, they're legal in Canada if you can actually find a place that can do it. And a lot of the communities that hurts the most is the Indigenous peoples, people of color, people who are, living with poverty. And there's a lot of mistrust, especially when it comes to Indigenous peoples, towards our healthcare system. Because they might go in for an abortion and then come out never being able to have kids again.
Yes.
Because the country it has a fondness for eugenics.
So what are the provinces in where, I read reports about conservative controlled provinces basically, putting a chokehold on healthcare. But as someone who is not Canadian, I don't have the full picture. Where are some of the provinces where this getting an abortion or seeking one there would essentially be there'd be a ton of guardrails to doing so because of conservative control?
Pretty much the easiest place to get one done is Quebec. Other than that, it's a struggle.
Wow, really?
New Brunswick is a hassle. Ontario is probably your second best
That's
bet.
what I would have guessed Ontario first.
Yeah, just given the size and the population. But we currently have a conservative government that is butchering our healthcare system and privatizing a lot of things. Also got rid of the bylaw that meant that protesters had to stay a certain distance away from abortion clinics when protesting. So they got rid of that barrier, and they're making it more and more difficult. And there are, conservative politicians that are openly anti-choice now, and they will occasionally float a bill in the House, saying, oh, let's restrict abortions based on gender. And those, generally speaking, don't go through because, much like in the States, the majority of Canada is pro-choice and wants this available. And we don't really want it to be the same level of fight that it is down there. But a lot of the problem with Canada is we're heading to the same place as you guys are. It just looks different. And so it's happening a lot quieter, and people aren't aware that it's happening until suddenly they need to get a procedure done, and it's no longer available.
Yeah, Sandy, it's Bradley. I just had a question about Ontario. To be clear, Doug Ford is still premier in Ontario, right?
He just got reelected back in for another 4 years.
And so,
yeah.
I imagine that has some influence over some of the abortion. Does his premiership obviously have some influence over what choice or anti-choice policies are happening in Ontario specifically?
So again, it's a lot more difficult to just make abortion illegal. That won't happen, but they can defund the clinics and do that sort of sideways stepping to make it harder and harder to make it accessible. And the thing is that the federal government is supposed to crack down on these provinces because the federal government basically supplies a lot of the funding for healthcare, but then it's up to the province to distribute that money to the healthcare system and make healthcare available. And, it's in our laws and stuff that the federal government should be cracking down on these provinces. And recently they did withhold some funding to New Brunswick because New Brunswick was going down to like one clinic or something of that sort. But these are rare. The federal government rarely tries to interfere with the provincial governments because that opens it up to, if the provincial governments then refuse, then they're in a standoff. And it becomes really awkward for both parties. And if the province is really stubborn with anything the federal government says, they can use the notwithstanding clause and just say, no, we don't agree with you, and we're just going to do this anyway.
All right. Well, I really appreciate the update, Sandy. Thanks so much.
Oh, yeah. And just super quick, if I can, about a caller from last week who called in about Bill C-22.
Sure.
Or, Bill C-11. Bill C-11. It's not a good bill, and it actually has the potential to affect the majority report. It's about online security, basically bringing broadcasting standards to online programming, which is really ridiculous to do. And this is one of the bills that can be confusing because it's one where the people who are progressive like me actually are in agreement with the people on the far right. So it can be confusing when you see Jordan Peterson actually against this bill, and then it's like, here I am saying, oh, I'm also against this bill. I have a playlist about Bill C-10. That's what it was called before in the last parliament, and then it died on the floor, and it came back as Bill C-11. But also a very good person to follow online is Michael Geist. He has his own webpage, and you can follow him on Twitter as mgeist. He's a Canadian law professor that specializes in online security. And he covers this in great detail and actually explains how it has the potential to affect you guys. Like your content on YouTube, nothing will really happen to that other than maybe your discoverability in Canada will go down. But your independent podcast being broadcasted into Canada, there is a potential of that being affected because the language is being left so vague and there's no parameters set. What is determined to be a program is really left up in the air, and so it's for a future date to be decided.
All right, well, Sandy, thanks for the update on that, and everyone check out Left of the Box, all right?
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Yep. Talk to you soon. Bye.